Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our conversations with Gibran the Prophet. We are engaged in some 30 lectures that will take us through our reading of the Prophet. We're in lecture 14 on laws. And we said in our previous lecture that we're treating three of these now poems as a very intriguing trinity. That is to say, crime and punishment. Here it will be on laws. To follow will be on freedom. In the crime and punishment poem, he called these ideas heavy words, and I think he meant to say it that way. Al-Mustafa is standing in front of the temple, and he's now gotten around to some really thorny philosophic questions. We're going to continue to play that game here. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net. Down that left-hand side, you'll find our playlist there. I'm hopeful that you were exposed to our introductory set of comments. For example, when we talk about ontology and the like, what are we speaking of? And then I'm hopeful that you've been following our stuff up through and including the last poem on crime and punishment. Now, the moment that you see on laws, of course, we will immediately in 303 think of Plato's not only Republic, you'll remember in Republic 7, the shadows on the wall and all of that, but of course as well that amazing treatise, Laws, correct? So we're going to be there. Of course, the challenge always in this discussion, as we've talked about it many times at learnstrong.net, is power versus human dignity, and how do you balance those? Think of Thoreau's civil disobedience. We've given full lectures. The majority of one, as he will refer to it, refusing to pay his taxes. Think about St. Aquinas and his distinction between human law and natural law that, of course, Martin Luther King Jr. will borrow from that idea in his letter from a Birmingham jail. And obviously we've commented on that at learnstrong.net as well. There's always going to be, for Gibran, there's always going to be his romanticism, that notion that all individuals possess this God self. And if that is the case, then what is the need for laws? And obviously punishment was the last one. Ultimately, Gibran will place passion over reason, and we'll get to that poem here in a while. Let's just now enjoy, as a lawyer, notice we had lawyers, we had judges in the last one, now we have lawyers. A lawyer is going to go to work. Then it's a natural transition from the last poem to this poem. Then a lawyer said, "But what of our laws, master?" Now, this lawyer is going to be representative of possibly a real thorn in the side of Gibran and his romantic view. You'll probably remember that the 1 John 4:18 passage, perfect love casts out fear. And it's always been the question, fear of what? And I think Gibran here would argue fear of laws. So let's go to work. A lawyer said, "But what of our laws?" All right. And he answered, "You delight in laying down laws." Now, he's commenting on lawyers, but obviously this is the question about, well, wait a minute, are we saying all humans delight in laying down laws? Is that part of human nature? Is this that, as he was talking about, the God self that he was talking about in the earlier poem? You delight in laying down laws, yet you delight more in breaking them, which seems to, in some ways, defy some of this notion of the innate goodness of the human spirit, if humans are by definition interested always in breaking things, breaking laws. And then he uses the simile. Like children playing by the ocean who build sand towers, sand castles, with constancy and then destroy them with laughter. I find this one of the more compelling word pictures in all of the Prophet. Think about it. What do children do? Well, they love order. Yeah, making the sandcastle. But they also love, I say we also love, some of you smiling, right? We also love, after we've built these intricate, amazing projects in sand, to destroy them. We think obviously of the Tibetans and their mandalas, and the way in which they'll create these amazing mandalas, and then they'll destroy them. They'll sweep them up and spread them to the wind. But, now he'll continue. But while you build your sand towers, the ocean brings more sand to the shore. And when you destroy them, the ocean laughs with you. Verily, the ocean laughs always with the innocent. Now, this word picture is a compelling one. The idea here is that we don't need laws, lots of laws, if we allow for our true nature to govern us. But, he's ready to go to work now. Heavy words, we might say. But what of those to whom life is not an ocean, and man-made laws are not sand towers, but to whom life is a rock, and the law a chisel, with which you would carve it in their own likeness? What of the cripple who hates dancers? What of the ox who loves his yoke, and deems the elk and deer of the forest stray and vagrant things? What of the old serpent? We immediately think of Genesis 3, right? What of the old serpent who cannot shed his skin and calls all others naked and shameless? And of him who comes early to the wedding feast, and when overfed and tired goes his way, saying that all feasts are a violation and all feasters lawbreakers. Now, of course, this construction of what of, and the repetition is brilliant. This is in some ways some would call it the ultimate critique of Romanticism. What about those who act unjust or against their nature? Is it because they are fallen, or is it because of some kind of poor, we'll just call it, education? And he continues, notice often that when Gibran starts to dance around these very thorny, difficult questions, he'll often go in the form of questions himself. In other words, he's very Socratic in his approach. What shall I say of these, save that they too stand in the sunlight, but with their backs to the sun? Now we're going to get to sun and shadows. It's a brilliant word picture. Watch it. They see only their shadows, and their shadows are their laws. So get the picture. We got the sun, we're standing, we've got the shadow there that's created because of the directionality of the sun. They see only their shadows, and their shadows are their laws. Obviously, we're thinking now about Republic 7, no question, the cave allegory. We've given full lectures at learnstrong.net. And what is the sun to them but a caster of shadows? And what is it to acknowledge the laws but to stoop down and trace their shadows upon the earth? But you, who walk facing the sun. So notice there's this dichotomy, where on the one hand, there's those who just love making laws, enforcing the laws, even though they themselves often don't keep the laws. We go back to our previous lecture where we were mentioning the John 8 passage, a woman caught in infidelity, and Christ will suggest those who are without sin should be the ones first to cast the stone to punish. And of course they all leave because they all recognize, oh, I've got problems in my own life. And what is it to acknowledge the laws but to stoop down and trace their shadows upon the earth? But you who walk facing the sun, what images drawn on the earth can hold you? That is to say, freedom. You who travel with the wind, what weather vane shall direct your course? In other words, if all humans were tuned into what he has already called the God self, if we were all tuned in, if we could all live this life of this code of love, we wouldn't need lots and lots of laws. What man's law shall bind you if you break your yoke, but upon no man's prison door? What law shall you fear if you dance, but stumble against no man's iron chains? And who is he that shall bring you to judgment if you tear off your garment, yet leave it in no man's path? Now, a lot has been said and written about these lines, and it's pretty clear that what Gibran is arguing is that we should be free to do whatever it is we want, but within limit, by virtue of not hurting others, causing others pain, and the like. He will then finish with, people of Orphalese, you can muffle the drum, and you can loosen the strings of the lyre, but who shall command the skylark not to sing? Immediately we think, of course, of Shelley's To a Skylark when we read a line like this. In other words, there is an innate longing for freedom. Laws will keep that from happening, and the goal is to live as much as one can seeking freedom. What are we going to say about this passage at 2a? Well, true laws are really of the heart, and that is always going to take us back to his view on love as the ultimate representation of what this true God is, this God's self is. At 2b, I love these word pictures, especially sandcastles and shadows. It's a compelling word picture. We mentioned at 3a, we mentioned 1 John 4:18, perfect love casts out fear, Plato's Republic 7. But I want to mention John Stuart Mill's On Liberty. That is one of the foundational texts, and I think it makes sense to go, and we've given lectures on it at learnstrong.net, but I think it makes sense to sit down and reread that with this passage in mind. Finally, at 3b, what are your thoughts about laws? Do you think that we need laws? Are they a necessary, as they say, necessary evil? And to what degree do laws then allow for freedom as opposed to opposing freedom, which will take us to our next of the, as I said, these 3 lectures where we'll go from crime and punishment to laws, and then finally to freedom. And this interesting idea that we are as free as we allow ourselves to be. What an interesting thought. Let's come back to it. Thank you.